Okay, good afternoon. I'm Balaji, as was already introduced. I know the first part is a little complicated, even for me, so I'm generally known as Balaji. That's a good way to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you about Millennium Development Goals and priorities for future. It's just taking you a little out of your usual settings and from your microcosm of where you are to the global village. The Roslins of the world will get better when they know what's the world, and because I'm sure Roslyn recognizes that she is going to be operating in the world and not just New York or United States. So you need to know what's happening in the rest of the world and what are the issues and concerns in other parts of the world and where you can make a difference. So that's what I'm going to focus in. And how many of you, before I get on to, how many of you have heard of Millennium Development Goals or Millennium Declaration? Okay, tell me more about it.
Well, I've been with HCS for a while, so I've seen some of your previous presentations. And if I remember correctly, the Millennium Development Goals were goals that were set at the beginning of the millennium by the UN for addressing global issues that are affecting. I believe there were, I don't remember the precise number, but there's a list of major issues in the world that that we are attempting to address within a certain timeline.
Very true. These are goals or priorities that were set by the world. Now, UN was only a welcome. It was not UN that set them. These were priorities that were set by the world, by the leadership of the world, meaning the presidents, the prime ministers, the kings, and the heads of states of all the countries of the world gathered together at the UN, and they looked at issues that the world will be facing for the next few years and decided that they need to set goals and need to commit themselves as leaders on assuring a future for the world, or assuring a future for people like you and children yet to be born. So unless the world becomes better, there is no future. So it was with that kind of a context that the Millennium Development Goals or the Millennium Declaration was signed, and it had Millennium Development Goals. And these goals are from time to time reviewed. So there was, just last year in September, there was a review at the end of 10 years, where has the world come to. So these goals are to be achieved by the world by 2015. So I will not take you through each of the actual goals per se, but give you a snapshot of where we are and what is the balance or job to be done. The Millennium Development Goal 1 is about poverty and about nutrition. Poverty, there was the leaders agreed that they would reduce poverty to less than half of what it was in 1990, and this is where we are. What is the proportion of people living in below the poverty line? In the developing world, it's about it came down from 45% to 27%, but that is only global average. But if you try to look at it country by country or region by region, you see here sub-Saharan Africa, it's still 51% of the population is below the poverty line. Southern Asia, 39%. Southern Asia, if you exclude just India, then it comes down to 31%. Caribbeans, 26%. Central Asia, 19%. Southeastern Asia, 19%. East Asia, 16%, and so on. So if you really look at where they were in 1990 and where they reached, they are still way behind what they said in terms of reducing it by half. So almost every region, we have not reached the half of what they were in 1990, and it is definitely an area, particularly in today's economic situation, it's a goal which is most likely not going to be met. Now what does it mean? It means that there are people who are, another thing that's happening is the richer are getting richer and the poorer are getting poorer. That means those who are poor are more vulnerable and need more support and need much more work if they have to get the basic social services of health, education, and so on. When it comes to nutrition, those regions which are shaded in various shades of red, those are the ones which are worst off, some worse than others. As you can see, parts of Central Africa, parts of East Africa, that's where the poor are many more. You find them also in Asia. The poorest regions are in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Mongolia, and parts of the Caucasus, Tajikistan, and so on. But as a whole, the whole of Asia and the whole of Africa and parts of Latin America, we still have lots of problems in terms of malnutrition. Okay? When you look at the level of malnutrition, yes, this is about the hunger. So hunger is a representation of malnutrition. So when you look at malnutrition in children, then you see that some regions are worst compared to others. South Asia is highest, it's about 43%. Sub-Saharan Africa comes very close, 22% of children being malnourished, and the rest are between 18 and going down further down. But if you look at further, those who are in the poorest households, you see the prevalence in 1995 was about 64% of children coming from the poorest households were malnourished. It has only come down to 60%. Whereas in richer households, 37% were malnourished, 26% are today still malnourished. So malnutrition is across all wealth quintiles. You find them in both the poor and rich. In the poor, it's much higher, and the rate at which it comes down is slower compared to those in the richer families. And you look at it in LDCs. That is these are about the least development countries. If you Google for LDCs, you would get a list of countries which are least developed countries. Those are the countries with a GNP per capita below a particular limit, way below the poverty limits, and in those countries the malnutrition levels are even higher. Look at next major area. When you look at most of you are very fortunate. You are here because you have completed your primary education, you are on your secondary education, you are about to finish that and get on to college. But there are still many countries, many communities, many households, and increasingly even in inner cities you find them right here in this country where children are not able to complete their primary education, and even if they do get to finish their primary education, they do not have the levels of learning that they should have. So you find that across all regions, although these bars represent who are enrolled, meaning the levels are around 90% in most regions except Sub-Saharan Africa, but still when you look at the world as a whole, 67 million children are still out of school. And when you look at that, at the top, it is Sub-Saharan Africa which has the maximum, and as you go down, some of the other regions have lesser children out of school. This gives you an idea about gender parity, meaning boys versus girls. In secondary education it is worse, particularly in least developed countries. In secondary education, only 27%, for every 27 girls attending secondary school, there are 66 boys. Or if you look at it, take it another way, out of 100 boys, 66 boys are able to attend secondary school. Out of 100 girls, 27 girls are able to attend or enroll in secondary school. In primary school, the numbers are better. 84 boys out of 100 and 56 girls out of 100 are able to enter primary school. That gives you an idea of the backwardness of least developed countries. This is not the case across all the girls, and the heavier graph shows the boys. So there is that, sorry, this is not the gender of this thing. This is about what it was in 98, 99, and what it is most recent data, that is 2008 and 2009. There is a similar graph that I had which would show similar differences between boys and girls. Boys and girls differences there throughout, but it is much worse in least developed countries. Haiti, as Rosalind was talking about, is one of the least developed countries in this region, in the American region. In sub-Saharan Africa, a number of countries are least developed countries. If you go to Asia, you'll find Bhutan, Nepal as least developed countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, they are amongst the LDCs. So you go to region by region, there will be a number of countries which are least developed countries. This gives you an idea of how the what is the average number of years of schooling in different countries. Central African Republic is way below, less than 2. Chad, less than 4 years. Imagine the average number of years a child spends in school is less than 4 in Chad. In Bangladesh it's about 6. In Honduras it's about 8. Bolivia 10. Ukraine 14 years, or close to 14, 13 years. In Nigeria, let's take the example of Nigeria, is 6.7. Now, does it mean throughout the country everyone is 6.7? No. The poorest children are able to complete only 3.5 years of education, whereas the richest, on an average, manage to spend about 9.7 or close to 10 years of education. Then let's spread this further. In rural areas and urban areas, you would find a further difference. If a child is from a poorest community in Nigeria, then it's going to get only about 3.3 years of education. You further split it by girls and boys, girls are even worse. And you see certain regions, even in Nigeria, it's even worse than the rest of the national average. So what I'm trying to say through this particular graph is basically to say that you should never, as young people interested in development, be satisfied with averages. You have to scratch beneath the average and try to find out what's really happening in different communities, what's really happening between different states, for example in the United States. Or if you're looking at New York City, you know that between the inner city and the rest of the city, there are big differences. But that is possible to find out and act upon only if you start collecting data or start looking for data. Never be happy with just getting average, on an average, this is what happens in New York State or in New York City. If you've got that kind of information, you should never be happy with that. You should try to find out better and more disaggregated information to find out where the problems lie, so that where the problems lie, you can have a focused or targeted action. Look at undefined mortality rate in children. This is another area where this is the goal number 4. Again, parts of South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa have very high levels of mortality. Now, undefined mortality is a very good indicator representing not just health, but represents a number of issues related to children's development. It talks about health, it talks about education of their parents, it talks about the conditions and situations they